Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Tomie, a Japanese horror movie from 1998. The Tomie franchise currently has 9 live-action films, to my knowledge. I may have lost track at some point, but all of which I have already covered in my Asian Horror Year in Review playlist, and I'll include a link to that playlist in the description box below. However, I thought it would be a good idea to do a separate review of the first film in conjunction with its recent Blu-ray release. Now, on a side note, I have actually read the Junji Ito manga that this is based on, so I have at least a point of reference in that regard. Now, Tomie tells the tale of an evil high school seductress, identifiable by a beauty mark beneath her left eye, whose bewitching kiss drives men to madness. Now, photography student Tsukiko is plagued by violent dreams as she struggles to recall long-suppressed memories following a teenage trauma with the help of psychologist Dr. Hosono. Meanwhile, as Detective Harada leads an investigation into a missing high school girl, he discovers a long line of similar cases that can be traced back decades, with all of the victims going by the name of Tomie Kawakami. Now, the premise of this movie is pretty fascinating, alright? The whole premise of the concept of Tomie is pretty great. You know, our antagonist here basically infatuates men to the point of insanity, often resulting in brutal murders. So it's almost as if their obsession with Tomie drives them into a state of excessive paranoia and sheer lunacy, after which they lose control and murder people. The interesting thing, though, is that Tomie typically does not inflict violence against other people herself. It's her crazy fanboys that do all of the damage. In fact, her attractiveness and allure seem to be caused more by her nature, other than an intentional act of her own. Although she does get some joy out of it, too, I think. But this is partially evident when we consider that sometimes her fanboys turn against her. And that's where you have this interesting dynamic going on here. Now, I'll stop there to avoid any additional surprises, but very interesting concept that is quite different and creative when you think about it. Now, the manga does a good job of exploring this through a series of short stories for the most part, some of which are better than others. Overall, I do not think that this movie, or really any of the Tomie movies for that matter, really delve into it and explore this premise with any significant depth, which makes this entire film franchise feel like a bit disappointing overall. Now, the script writing has never been strong enough to really cash in on it. That's what this franchise needs. Like, this would be prime for a remake. If somebody in Japan wanted to remake this movie, or just do another adaptation of the manga, and get a really good scriptwriter in there, I mean, this could be just an awesome movie. You know what I mean? So this is a remake that I would be behind, actually. But it's the intriguing psychological undercurrent that still works in this, even in its imperfected form here. And that's why this movie and even some of the sequels have kind of grown on me over the years. I do enjoy this franchise more than I used to. Now, unlike most Japanese horror franchises, the villain in this is played by a different actress almost every time. Now, in this case, Miho Kano plays Tomie, and she gives one of the better performances, I think. The filmmakers obscure her face for much of the film, but she completely owns the final act and definitely makes a positive impact. Her eyes are real creepy too, so she does a good job. Our protagonist is played by Mami Nakamura, who does a fine job. Nothing too memorable, but she's, a good actress, and if you're into like the art house scene, you may recognize her from the lead role in Tokyo Trash Baby, which was released around the same time period. Yoriko Doguchi plays the psychiatrist or doctor, and I've always been a fan of her, mostly through her supporting roles in various Kiyoshi Kurosawa films. And then we get Tamaro Taguchi as the detective. Tetsuo the Iron Man himself shows up, and he gets a good amount of screen time. So I think the supporting cast helps. The casting in this movie in general is just pretty solid. There are a few memorable moments of horror. The strange opening sequence and the creepy song. That song's creepy, man. It's definitely a highlight. The regeneration process, which is portrayed in a few demented ways. A few nicely gruesome images and corpse shots. I would classify it as a pretty great jump scare. At least it got me the first time at the very end that does not use a loud noise. And that's quite a rarity in the realm of horror films. But if you're a fan of the manga and you haven't seen this movie, it is mostly lacking in the crazy, grotesque body horror imagery of the source material. So the manga had some insane imagery that it showed. Never really makes its way into this movie. Some of the sequels dabble in it a little bit more, but yeah, that's a bit of a negative observation there. Now, this film's ability to create an ominous feel is still effective to a degree, and that's one of its strengths. Soundtrack, theme song are creepy and weird. Sound design is effective. But I would say another significant criticism, in addition to some other things that I've mentioned already, is that most of these live-action movies are glacially paced. Very slow pacing to these. This isn't like something you're going to get together a group of friends and throw on Tomie and have a great time. Okay, most of the films are not that way, with the exception of maybe Tomie Unlimited. It would be the only film that I think would classify as that. This is more like a weird art house flick, and it's in line with a lot of the horror films Japan released in this time period. But it does have a memorable vibe to it, I think, even though it moves very slowly. So I repeat myself because this is going to be a problem for some viewers, because some scenes do drag out a bit, so keep that in mind. But I think when all is said and done, I still enjoy Tomie, this first film, and a few of the sequels. Not the most well-received Japanese horror films out there, and you do need to be in the mood for a slower burn, but I do enjoy it. I think it's cool, and it has grown on me. Currently available streaming on YouTube and Amazon. It also got that recent Blu-ray release from Arrow Video. And as always, I'll see you next time.